memahami atau mengajari, bukan mengajari, maaf, mempelajari kan. Agim itu sering beliau bertemu dengan para elit, elit ekonomi, politik, agama. So to understand him, we have to understand the phenomenon. I had to understand the different places in which a media figure was. So on the right-hand side, we have a TV set of his show, Suara Hati bersama Agim. To the left, we have a picture of Agim in the DPR during the hearings of RUU anti-pornography in the year of 2006. And if you can see, I'm in the background on the far right. So we have to understand Agim as he operates and circulates in the TV studio, in the with the state and the central government, and of course with his religious following. But theory and method, this ethnography of following them, when Agim was trying to get funding for his moral movement, Gerakan Membangun Nurani Bangsa, he was trying to get sponsors for a 10K run for the Hati Nurani of Indonesia. And he did this by approaching very important senior figures. One on the left here at that time was the Minister of BUMN, Sugiharto. And then on the right, this picture you have with him and President SBY at that time. Now, to get President SBY to wear a polo shirt, baju sukarelawan Gemanusa, is not very easy. So Agim used his media stature to bring these elite figures into his orbit, merangkul mereka. So I talk about Agim's strategy is a politik merangkul. And so on this day, for example, and for this research, I had to be willing to go to the different places where Agim was. Now, as we know, Agim suffered a scandal. Itu kan jadi skandal. Akhir tahun 2006, awal bulan Desember, ada rahasia yang keluar. Agim sudah nikah lagi. He had married again to a woman who was in his Islamic school as an employee. And here again, we see media plays a role in the public debates. And print media, even in this era of social media, remains important. So Gatra, which is, I say, once as I say print media remains important, Gatra is no longer a magazine, but Gatra at that time was very important, and they ran a cover story. Tempo, which still is here, ran a cover story with a joke about poligami masuk istana. And so there, it was the television media that was the reason that Agim gained his popularity, and also the reason that his downfall was so drastic. Then we enter this area of social media. Now, at this time, Agim took many years after his downfall to settle down, to find himself, to regather his wealth, his companies, his own self. And then around the time before the Dua Satu Dua movement, 2-3 months before this, when the first protests were happening in front of the Istana Negara, Istana President, and then also also of course later at Istiqlal, Agim started to come back on the scene, in a public scene. And here we have a tweet from Agim on that first protest of the blasphemy case, and he says, "Umat yang datang luar biasa banyaknya. Sayang sekali Jokowi sama sekali tak mau menemui rakyat yang tak terluka hati." And then in a television, people can't talk back to him in the same way. In television episodes, everyone who asked him a question had already had that question either approved or given to them directly. But on Twitter, people can talk back to Agim. And so we have one handle called Absolutia, and she goes by Ambitious. Lebih terluka hati perempuan yang dimaharusi. Those who are more brokenhearted are the women who have had husbands take another wife. And so here we see Agim's comeback is even limited by the rise of social media. as he straddles these two eras. Now, what I'd like to do is shift some of this discussion into not just how media is used to garner religious authority or even to lose religious authority, but to think about media as a form of religious critique and as a form of humor. And I want us to think about humor as something that is Islamic. So here we have from NU Garis Lucu again, a funny meme that has two kids clearly at the pesantren, one with a sarong over their back, and the other one with a peci on the side that's looks like it was photoshopped in. And then it says, Tentang Santri Kreatif. So the idea of being creative, this certain kind of post-millennial quality that's been valorized, is now in the spaces of pesantren. We have NU people making films. In fact, the film Tiga Doa Tiga Cinta um, by Nur Hakim was uh, was basically a Santri film, and it made it into the mainstream media. Now, of course, this is contested, and people are not happy that some of these media preachers have gotten the authority. Here we have a meme and cartoon that really was circulated very widely. Ini sudah saya sudah nonton ini lihat ini di wah sudah puluhan halaman Facebook dan lain Instagram dan segala macam. So what is compared here is the ustad of the generation generasi kitab kuning and the ustad generasi Google. For the kitab kuning, the traditionalist, it is trying to be very complex in its religious argument, talking about exceptions, etc. Whereas the Google ustad says, wah, this is black and white, ini sudah hitam putih. Jadi saya yakin seyakin-yakinnya kalau ada pendapat yang berbeda pasti itu salah. Titik. So we have this tension arising between preachers in the media and those who got their popularity through media versus those who got their popularity through more traditional and conventional means through Ormas Islam or conventional religious education. Now, at the same time, media and memes were being used to critique those who thought they were so pious, using the Indonesian word so suci. We must also remember that this is a time when PKS was having a downfall and other Islamists were having embarrassing moments and scandal. So in this picture, we see terima jasa, ketok jita, in a sense of he gets to pound, and as if this was something that was made up, that these marks on his forehead are not from prayer, but from paying someone. We also, if we'll remember the visit of President Obama, we had an incident, this was televised on TV, and Tifatul Sembiring, who had never shaken the hand of women and always said that that was not correct, then shook the hand of Michelle Obama. And then Uni Lubis, a journalist, comes back and writes and says on Twitter, hey, you'll shake our hand, but not ours. Why is that? And then he comes back and says, oh, no, it wasn't me. She tried to shake my hand. And then others posted the footage that shows two hands of Tifatul Sembiring clasping Michelle Obama. And here we have this joke by Fonda Lapad, who is a political cartoonist, saying, oh, he's an excited Tifatul Sembiring. Hey, Michelle, I'm Tifatul, Minister of Communication and Information. Hey, bukan muhrim. And of course, it means mahram, but this is the joke and the play on words. So here, media is used in the early and mid 2000s. PKS and other political parties who espouse an Islamist um, stance, such as them, have had mistakes and then are being criticized through the social media. Here, we can think back to other scandals here. A PKS member who was accused of watching pornography during Parliament. Of course, the former head of PKS, when he became the Minister of Agriculture, who got brought up by the Corruption Eradication Commission for uh, corruption in a beef scandal. And then Tifato submitting again the first minister to follow a pornographic Twitter feed. So here, media is part of the rise of a certain Islamic sentiment in Indonesia. Yet at the same time, media was part of the downfall and the disgrace and the shame of the images of some of the Islamists, such as PKS and FPI. Now here we have media again in the cartoons. Um, we have a media of Sapi Potong Impor, and you have PKS holding the flag Berantas Korupsi, but then they get tripped. Here again, we have another cartoon. Okay, Pak, cuci sampai bersih ya. Okay, so you have the PKS emblems that are reworked, and the bubbles look like little eyes. And so, of course, this is a play on words of cuci uang and the way in which corruption can be made possible in Indonesia. Here again, with the FPI, they have also been the target of such memes. Here we have a kind of, it draws out their hypocrisy and irony of figures such as Habib Rizik Shihab, who with a clenched fist can say, Ane ante kafir America. And then, of course, he's driving a Jeep Rubicon, which is an American made car. But then the idea that he can say, mobil ini mereknya Pidge, bukan Jeep, bukan mobil kafir Amerika, karena aneh bacanya dari kanan ke kiri, jadikan Jeep bukan, Pidge bukan Jeep. So here we have memes making fun of FPI. And if you know about this area of memes, as you may do, as many probably do, there are many of similar memes, some that are much more kasar than this. And then here we have memes and social media as a way to think about interreligious communication and relations. So here we have Daddy Corbusier, who had been a Catholic, becomes a Muslim, and then Enu Garis Lucu says, or so Enu Garis Lucu, Catholic Garis Lucu begins, hari ini kami serahkan at Corbusier ke NU Garis Lucu untuk selanjutnya silakan disunat dan diarahkan. And NU Garis Lucu says, siap dan ajaran-ajaran baik dari sampean tetap kami pertahankan. So here this is a joke about Islamic principles, about keeping the good parts of the previous revelations of God and improving on those that are not. But humor is also a humor. And I want to make a point that Islam can be funny. And this might sound humorous to many of us, but in the West, there's the idea that Islam is not joyous. And here we have just a funny meme. It's not a political critique. It's joy for the sake of laughter. It says, baru kali ini kami tak bisa melaksanakan umroh karena COVID. Biasanya kami tak berumroh karena tak punya duit, gitu loh. So this humor and fun that comes out of the experience of being, but also the experience of being Muslim. Here we have another favorite that Enugaris Lucu posts. It says, wah, ada yang minta maaf tapi belum lebaran, bung. This joke that one can only minta maaf kalau itu sudah halal bihalal atau lebaran. We have more through NU and others where they will take popular film posters, which was Surga yang tak dirindukan, a famous film, and then change it and change the picture that says sarung yang tak dirindukan. And you see the sarungs that are hanging onto the sampai lantai, that are hanging in a way that makes solat very difficult. And so here we have a kind of a humorous, a sense of humor about the very experience, the phenomenology of being Muslim. Now, allow me to come here and get moved to some conclusions about methodology and ethnography. What does it mean to do research about media, especially social media? Can we just look online and look at memes and, for example, hit a Google search and Ugaris Lucu, or an Instagram search, a Twitter search, and Ugaris Lucu, or internet memes, Islam memes, Is that enough for an ethnography? Now, what about the relationship between online and offline research? Here I'm thinking about Second Life in Linden Lab. So, Second Life is the digital space, a place where Tom Belstorff, a very well known scholar of digital methods, he became an avatar in Second Life. And he wrote a book from the position of that avatar within the online world. Now, Thomas Mallaby, another anthropologist, also wrote about Second Life, but not from the perspective of being inside the game. He did an ethnography in Linden Lab, the very company, the material reality of the net that makes Second Life. And what I would say to you is that Tom Belstorff said that his was enough, complete to do it in Second Life. And I would say that it's not enough to do research just online, that there must be an offline component, that the kind of ethnographic insights we get at Linden Lab are important. To do research in the mid 2000s, it would not be enough to watch Aagim's ceramah di televisi. It was much better to follow him, to see him, to understand and observe that person. And so here what we do is we move from Roland Barthes, this emphasis on meaning, on semiotics, on symbol, to online communities, to practices, to the way in which images circulate and get forwarded, re-forwarded, hashtagged, loved, hated, etc. So also, I would say that within Islamic studies, if we want to understand the internal critiques of Islam today, we must look online. It's no longer enough, and I don't think it ever was, to look at the published critiques and engagement with medieval philosophers, medieval Muslim scholars. Even Kitab Kuning has gone digital, so we must also go digital in our understanding of Islamic and Muslim critique. Now, a lot of this talk early, especially around the time of the Arab Spring, made us think that perhaps we were in a moment where globalization and world media technologies meant that the nation state was no longer important. To those people who think the nation state is no longer important, I would remind them that under the influence of PKS in Indonesia, RUU-APP became the law of anti-pornography. There have been sites blocked, people blocked, etc. If we want to look at the Arab Spring, Egypt was very, very capable of shutting down internet, Twitter, Facebook, Google, as long as they needed it to try and quiet Tahrir Square. They were able to silence on the media, at least for the most part, the horrific images when their own army came in and massacred people from, uh, especially Muslim Brotherhood aligned, who were in Tahrir Square to rebel and to protest later. So, religious authority and Muslim practice continue to be important themes in our work. And I would just add that with respect to this, the net and social media has become important. But if we are to be anthropologists, and if we are to truly try and understand these phenomena, we must understand offline and online communities and try and understand Islam as it is both created online, but also and debated online, as well as offline in the local communities, the face-to-face communities, the local corner mosques where a lot of these conversations will be carried out. So thank you very much. Terima kasih atas kesempatan berbagai ya beberapa ide hari ini, dan terima kasih kepada kawan-kawan di plenary dan di konferensi ini. Mohon maaf kalau seandainya ada kata-kata yang kurang berkenan, kalau seandainya ada Saya mohon kami semua ingat kata-kata lucu dari Gus Dur. Gitu aja kok repot. Terima kasih. Thank you very much, and I'll stop it here.
Thank you very much, Pak James, for your very good presentation. Pak James talked about the digital Islam from multiple perspectives, talking about the Islamic studies in a digital era, and also talk about the Arabs being that also result ya adminnya jangan ikut nyala. From Pak Jim's presentation, we know that the media is very powerful. Talk about the power of the media. Give the example as Jim's strategy, how with his media production can become a very popular Muslim scholars in Indonesia. But also by the media also it goes down because about the polygamy shit. And also how the media plays the important role in giving the message of the very funny message such as katok jidat, as we said, as an Islamic tattoo jidat. And also we talk about the importance of the theory and also the methodology in Islamic studies in digital era, such as not only using the semiotic, but also we have to use the online, we have moving from the semiotics to online communities. And also talk about the authority, the religious authority and Muslim practices. So very much points that we can conclude or we can take from Pak Jim's presentation. So we have half an hour, 30 minutes for discussion, for asking question. Also, we can ask to the presenter to the speakers to answer the questions. So we give you 2 or 3 person who can ask the question. Pak Iksan, can you help me to choose the person who will ask to the speakers, please? Yeah, tell your name and also the institution, the institution. Ada yang tanya si siapa? Pakistan udah keluar ya? Siapa? Awalu.
Terima kasih atas kesempatannya. Perkenalkan, nama saya Anisah Maryam dari Universitas Darussalam Gontor. Ingin mengajukan pertanyaan kepada Pak James ya. Apa menurut Anda dan bagaimana pandangan Anda tentang otoritas keagamaan di media sosial dan di era digital dan implikasi terhadap atau titik kritis dari otoritas keagamaan di media sosial? Apakah itu positif atau negatif dan bagaimana kira-kira dampak ke depannya?
Cukup.
Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you. Very good question from Anissa ya. Anissa. Next.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih sebelumnya. Saya ingin bertanya mengenai Bang Susu. Perkenalkan, nama saya Ila, saya dari Prodi PGMI semester 2. Pertanyaan saya mengenai bagaimana upaya penyadaran khususnya bagi ibu-ibu milenial yang saat ini sangat enggan untuk melakukan penyusuan. Nah, ketika dia akan mengambil susu dari bank susu tersebut, tapi enggan untuk melihat dari silsilah susu tersebut diambil dari mana, itu bagaimana cara kita melakukan penyadaran tersebut? Terima kasih.
Next. Sudah.
Iya, nama saya Kayan Manggala, saya dari UIN Malang. Saya ingin menanyakan kepada Ustaz Jem tadi tentang netografi itu seperti apa, karena emang yang kita kenalkan lebih etnografi, namun beliau memperkenalkan istilah lagi netografi yang hubungannya dengan Islam dan digital itu. Mungkin lebih butuh penjelasan lebih mendalam lagi sih. Mungkin itu aja. Sekian dari saya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Lagi. Once more. Satu lagi kalau ada. Ya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
Perkenalkan, my name is Fadil. Fadil dari Pascasarjana UINSA, jurusan Ilmu Al-Quran dan Tafsir. Ingin memberikan pertanyaan pada pemateri terakhir terkait dengan etnografi tadi, yang baru-baru ini sedang viral. Ini pertanyaannya lebih meminta pendapat sehingga tidak lebih daripada itu. Tolong berikan feedback terkait dengan yang lagi rame-rame belakangan ini di media sosial, perdebatan antara influencer yang bernama Guru Gembul dan Robito Alawiyah yang kemarin itu. Saya berikan ukuran normatifnya dulu. Kemarin Bapak Ismail Fajri Al-Attas sempat menyampaikan tentang otoritas keagamaan. Ada salah satu aspek yang tidak boleh lepas untuk menilai otoritas, yaitu aspek aksiologis, yaitu bagaimana seorang pemikir memiliki pengaruh kepada masyarakat. Sehingga kemudian dalam yang beliau sampaikan kemarin itu, seorang kiai lebih memiliki otoritas daripada MUI. Ya. Dari ukuran normatif ini, saya sempat berpikir apakah mungkin perdebatan yang ada di media sosial terkait dengan topik yang sedang memanas itu, terkait dengan terputusnya nasab, akan menjadi aspek yang teraksiologiskan atau aspek yang dianggap otoritatif kepada masyarakat yang secara notabene-nya tidak memiliki pemahaman mendetail terkait dengan metodologi perdebatan tersebut. Lebih-lebih jika dihitung secara kuantitatif, masyarakat yang memahami perdebatan itu tidaklah lebih daripada 5%-nya. Lantas arah dari pengaruh perdebatan di media itu dalam cara pandang etnografi bagaimana? Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. All the questions are very good, so we give to Pak James to answer the question. First, about the religious authority in social media, and the second about the ethnography for Islamic studies, and then the third about the dialogue between who's Guru Gembul and Robita Awalia. Last year, Pak James, in Ipcis 1, we invited Pak Fajri Alatas. He talked about the religious authority, and the person who asked you still remember about the points that Fajri Alatas talked in last year. So please, Pak James, to answer the question.
Oke, thank you very much. Terima kasih ya. Terima kasih atas tiga pertanyaan ini. Saya lihat saya mulai dari
Wait, Pak
kawan
James, we cannot hear your voice.
kalau sekarang
Ya,
bisa enggak?
oke.
Oke, maaf ya. Oke. Saya mulai dengan pertanyaan
Ya,
pertama
please.
ya. Eh, dari kawan maaf lupa namanya dari Gontor, Universitas Gontor, mengenai otoritas di media sosial dan titik kritis apa positif atau negatif dan segala macam. Ya, saya merasa bahwa ini mungkin nggak terlalu berbeda dengan eh, media di print media ya atau di televisi. Pasti ada yang mungkin ada pengaruh bagus, ada yang pengaruh yang kurang bagus. If I think about the positifnya, yeah, people have talked about how the authority of NU and Muhammadiyah has decreased because of some of this. Now, what I think has actually happened is that, and decreased because many, not all, of course, of the media preachers who have become very important on TV, on social media especially, are not necessarily traditionally NU or conventional Muhammadiyah. And so maybe you have like with Buya Yahya before on TV, someone who's culturally NU, but who also criticizes NU. Now, if we think about just NU in particular, what we've seen is NU, although the Salafis and others were more quicker to adopt media technologies, especially social media, and U has adapted very well and has a very strong young social media presence, websites, intellectual arguments that are being made on Islami.co or these others. You have NU Online, you have apps. Now, in terms of what's going to happen to the future, this I don't know. And I think what's interesting here is that much of social media, especially religious critique, it's not like the similar debates and in the philosophy of Islam of we will respond to one book with another book. This is very much production of material for consumption um, by these, by their own organizations. And so let's take something like En Ugaris Lucu. And Ugaris Lucu, especially when it came out at a time to protest and to make fun of, in a sense, En Ugaris Lurus after the Muktamar in 2015, um, for the most part, their memes, what we say in English, preach to the choir, or they are meant for their in group. They are meant for other NU people who agree with them. It solidifies a certain idea. And so the danger is that we are having the what we refer to as the kind of cocoons in English, a cocoon of media, so that people only listen to the media that they want to listen to or that they agree with. Now, at the same time, we have opportunities for new voices to come up and for more reasoning to happen. However, algorithms do not work well with rationality. So things that are more reactive, that cause more offense, those tend to get more views. And so that's a difficulty of the algorithms of the social media platforms that we use. And I think we need to be aware of those, especially in moments when hoaxes and misinformation get passed along. Now I'll move on to the second question about from our friend Uwan Malang on ethnography and what does this mean in terms of beyond ethnography and this I've seen used several times. I'm not the first person to use it. In fact, I was just reviewing a paper the other day that was looking at social media critiques of of that have been going on in relation to a couple things happening in Indonesia. I'll keep it anonymous. Um, and in this essay, it was very much an online analysis. It had very interesting online data. It had some big data that includes really fascinating quantitative materials that compare um, the kinds of criticism of, in this case, a particular concept, an Islamic concept, and it was very fascinating. And it had data that included online reactions to this. But what it didn't have was people, and no amount of data, of statistics, of memes, of online data is going to replace the analysis of the people who produce that data and the people who consume those social media. So I think for me, nethnography, the advent of online worlds, is really just another reason for us to pay attention to the people who are part of these. Now, for the third question, if I may, um, wow, ini sudah duduk di kursi panas ini. So this is a very controversial topic, apalagi kalau udah mau ini ucapkan nama kawan saya Mas Aji, Prof. Ismail Fajri Alatas mengenai otoritas keagamaan. What I would say first, with respect to our friend Pak Aji and his book, What is Religious Authority? This idea of articulatory labor, the way in which communities are made. Um, there, I can absolutely understand his point that uh, people would trust and believe and listen and follow politically a local village kiai more than an MU figure from MUI Pusat. That I believe very fervently. MUI was once a quasi-state organization that, of course, has gained its own authority and its own suspicion by some. It's linked to some of the its members come from different Ormas Islam, but it doesn't have the same authority in a village as someone as a kiai, and I think that brings us back to human relations. And even people who look at YouTube clips of Gus Baha or of Pak Haidar Nasir at Muhammadiyah, Abu Muti, whoever, um, they're still going to their local mosque and listening to a khutbah on the Fridays. So in terms of the debates, um, especially with the Hadrami population in Indonesia, here what I would do, and the Al Rabatia Al Alawiya, what I would do rather than entering the debate, and I think what I would point out is that historically, if we look at the work of Sumit Mandal is an historian in Malaysia who has this book that's titled "What is an or Becoming Arab," and it looks at the history of Arab communities throughout Nusantara, throughout Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. And the category of Arab has, and not just Arab, especially Hamdrami, and especially the Alawiya, in terms of the whether or not there's a descendants to the Prophet, it has always been a position of privilege and a position of precarity. And precarity is a fancy English word for that means dangerous, unsafe. So what happens when the Dutch come in, and the Dutch in Batavia, for example, separate the Kampucheas outside of the city walls? The Arabs have to live in a different town and a different area, and the Pribumi, so-called Pribumi, live in one area. That has an effect historically. And so Indonesia, as I see it, mohon maaf ya, saya orang luar, but as I see it, Indonesia has almost what we call in English a love-hate relationship with the Hadramis more broadly. Habib Lutfi, for example, has such a following. Yet when it comes to conversations of either Pribumi in Arab or whether or not somebody is a descendant of the Prophet, um, within a 10-year period, within a 2-year period, the reputation of those Arab Indonesian Muslims has been brought under scrutiny. And so I see this having less to do with media. Media is an example of how it blew up and why it became so viral. But I think the real feelings here are deeply rooted historical feelings, mohon maaf ya, within Indonesia that have to do with Arab populations, and the way in which media has taken about this. Some of this might have to do with internal struggles within particular Ormas Islam. Some have to do with divisions within those Yemeni communities. I mean, the Hadrami community is not a single community. So I would say that we need to think about the way in which the word Arab, the word Arabizasi, the kinds of assumptions and stereotypes about the Arab world that Indonesia holds. And I think a little bit of introspeksi diri could help solve and cool menunjukkan masalah ini. So those would be my answers at the moment. Mohon maaf kalau ada jawaban yang kurang berkenan, and I appreciate other questions or thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak James. Kita beri applause untuk Pak James. Ya. So we have to apologize to this.
Maaf Pak, lagi mute.
Yeah. We have to apologize to the second question because Bu Madia has another conference. So for the question about the milk bank, we'll give the question to Bu Madia and she'll answer from the email. Untuk sesi pagi ini kita cukupkan sekian, kita akhiri dan setelah ini kita istirahat untuk sholat dan makan siang. Setelah itu kita menuju ke ruang presentasi yang ada di lantai 7. Ya, lantai 7 nanti dilihat nama-namanya di ruang berapa. Terima kasih pada semuanya. Thank you very much Pak James. Naskurukum Ustadz Dr. Yusuf. Terima kasih Bu Madia, terima kasih Pak Niam atas kehadirannya dan terima kasih semuanya. Kurang lebihnya mohon maaf. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Waktu saya kembalikan ke MC.
Check. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, you may now please sit down first because the next agenda is giving certificates of appreciation for being the speakers at the Ipcis 2024, and the certificates appreciation will be delivered by the postgraduate director of Sunan Ampel, Surabaya.
Ya, hadirin peserta undangan yang ada di ruangan, kami mohon untuk duduk terlebih dahulu, duduk kembali di tempat duduknya masing-masing karena acara selanjutnya adalah pemberian cenderamata dan sertifikat untuk 4 orang narasumber kita pada hari ini. Baik, terlebih untuk narasumber kita yang berada langsung di dalam ruangan ini, yaitu satu-satunya narasumber Bapak Dr. Phil Khairun Niam, akan kami berikan cenderamata dan sertifikatnya secara langsung. Kami mohon untuk ke depan. yang dalam hal ini pemberian Cindramata dan sertifikatnya diberikan langsung oleh Direktur Pascasarjana UIN Sunan Ampel Surabaya, Dr. Masdar Hilmi, Profesor Masdar Hilmi PhD, mohon maaf. Kameramen bisa disiapkan karena untuk mengabadikan momen. Iya, fotografernya di mana? Kameramennya? Oke, baik. Satu, dua, tiga. Ya, gaya yang lain mungkin. Oh ya, lagi yang lebih proper ya kameranya, baik. Ini untuk Cindramatanya. Iya.
Okay, thank you
Baik,
so
terima
much.
kasih. Kita beri tepuk tangan yang meriah. Ya,
So
terima
for
kasih.
the online speakers today, will be given the certificate by via online because unfortunately, the speaker cannot attend our event today. So thank you for all speakers to be available in today's event, and we truly appreciate your effort and your knowledge today.
Ya, mohon operator untuk menampilkan. Ini pertama adalah sertifikat untuk Muhammad Yosef. Dr. Muhammad Yosef dari Libya.
So the next certificate is belong to James from USA. And the next certificate is belongs to Dr. Max Potty. And the next certificate is belongs to Normadiyah binti Daud.
Ya, baik, itulah tadi sertifikat yang kita berikan langsung, kita tampilkan secara online melalui sambungan Zoom meeting untuk para narasumber kita di hari pertama ini. Baik, hadirin sekalian, jangan kemana-mana dulu karena akan ada sesi foto bersama ya setelah ini. Mungkin para peserta hadirin sekalian tetap berada di kursi yang saat ini. Iya, foto bersama, Prof. Oke. Ya, jadi kami mohon untuk peserta tetap duduk atau berdiri mungkin ya biar bisa lebih terlihat di kursi masing-masing. Untuk segenap panitia acara, kemudian dosen, guru besar yang ada di Pascasarjana silakan untuk bergabung di depan peserta ya.
Okay, for the audience from the outside of the venue, you will now can come inside the venue to join the photo session. Okay, so for the speaker that is still available in Zoom meeting, you may now can open your camera so that we can take your picture.
Ya, untuk hadirin tamu undangan dan para peserta acara yang berada di luar ruangan, kami mohon untuk ke dalam agar ikut foto bersama. Baik, ya kami mohon setelah ini akan ada sesi isoma, maka itu sebelumnya kami mohon untuk mendokumentasikan kegiatan ini terlebih dahulu. Ya, silakan untuk maju ikut foto bersama di depan panggung. Untuk yang masih berada di luar, kami mohon untuk segera masuk. ikut sesi foto bersama sebelum kita mulai isoma di pukul 1 siang.
Okay, now for all of the audience, you may please come forward to take a picture together. For the audience, please come forward to take a photo. And the audience from the outside of the venue, you can enter the room to join the photo session today with our special speakers today. Okay, so let's count it down in 3, 2, 1, say cheese.
Ya, gaya selanjutnya, gaya non formal, Prof. Oh, lompat. Boleh, boleh. Sarang he ya. Ya, 1, 2, 3. Ya, sudah tidak waktunya kampanye ya, jadi 2 atau 1 sama saja ya. Ya. Iya, baik, kami ingatkan sekali lagi, saat ini adalah isoma, nanti Bapak Ibu semuanya bisa kembali lagi pukul 1 siang ya, karena dilanjutkan dengan parallel session di lantai 7, 8, dan 9. Dan untuk isoma, oke, baik, parallel sessionnya di lantai 7 saja ya Bapak Ibu sekalian, dan untuk isoma untuk putri atau wanita ada di musola lantai 2 dan 4. Ya, dan untuk laki-laki ada di lantai 3. Untuk makan bersamanya ada di lantai 7. Ya, di lantai 7 kita bisa menikmati hidangan yang sudah disediakan. Dan untuk sholat, untuk putri atau wanita itu ada di lantai 2 dan 4. Untuk laki-laki di lantai 3. Jam 1 kembali lagi untuk parallel session di lantai 7. Terima kasih.